Jon Jones versus Brock Lesnar.
Brock's so big though. Like I've seen both of them in person. Like he is way bigger than like he's probably the biggest fighter to ever fight in the UFC. Like in terms of like size and strength. Like he looks like a superhero character. Like he's really big. I think I'd have to go.
Welcome to the most overrated, underappreciated, most viewed, underviewed podcast of all time. Welcome to the Prince of Fresh Air. I'm, of course, your host, the beloved, the most charismatic man in entertainment. Beat that, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. Anyway, that's not what we are here for. Fresh off vacation from Nashville. Amazing place. But, enough about me. I want to introduce my next guest, even though he's returning. Who is James Lynch? Well, he's a full-time MMA journalist, one of the most nicest, one of the most hardworking people in MMA, especially as a journalist. He's a producer, a video editor. You could catch a lot of his stuff on UFC Fight Pass. Check out his channel, Lynch on Sports, one of the most incredible guys in the business. Please welcome James Lynch again to the podcast. How's everything?
Everything's great. Love that intro, man. I never get tired of hearing that. So thank you for the kind words, and appreciate you having me back on.
Absolutely. Let's get to it. We had the warm up before. This is part 2, so we're going to get right into it. So let's talk about it, shall we? Let's talk about it. Alex Pereira, Jon Jones. Everybody's talking about these two names. Now you might think you know why I'm bringing them up, but after UFC 312, when Alex Pereira lost to Magomed Ankalaev, there's been an ongoing discussion on a lack of superstars in the UFC. And now that Alex Pereira is not the light heavyweight champion anymore, a lot of people feel like this is a real important discussion. So let me ask you, before I get into the other topics, because they're all connected to each other, do you think the UFC does have a major superstar problem?
Absolutely, yeah. They've just failed to build new stars, and part of that is they do so many events that I think there's too much fatigue. There's not enough time for the UFC to like invest time into like building up stars. Like you could have a good performance, but they're already on to the next event. So I think they've had a problem with trying to build new stars. I also think that having guys like McGregor and Jones not fight that much, more so McGregor, he hasn't fought in a number of years. It's been hard to replicate that, and I think the UFC for a number of years kind of got lucky with some of the fighters they had on the roster, and I think it's really hard to make superstars of that caliber come up. Like, you just mentioned Alex Pereira. Like, he is a big star in the UFC. Is he a superstar? I would probably say not. I don't think he's the level of a McGregor or some of these other guys. Ilya Topuria certainly seems like he could maybe be going in that direction, but we'll have to see. I think the UFC does have a star problem, but it's also because they do too many events. That's something I've been saying for a while, and it's too much fatigue, I think, for fans.
That's a beautiful response, and I got a topic about that. But one of the things I kind of sit back and I think, Alex Pereira is one of the most popular superstars who don't speak English in the UFC. One of the most popular star athletes. And one of the things I kind of thought about, now that TKO group have WWE and UFC under one banner, we're seeing Tom Aspinall, we're seeing Bilal Muhammad, we're seeing Michael Chandler cutting promos on Monday Night Raw. My thing is, why don't they, and maybe this is actually a good question for you, why don't they adopt some of the WWE principles, right? Because when you look at Alex Pereira, what makes him stand out, yes, the knockouts are amazing, but he can go over to the WWE with the same shtick he has now and do amazing. He has the catchphrase CHAMA. He has the iconic look across the octagon when he steps in the octagon, right? His entrance, everybody knows the theme, everybody knows his pattern and walk out. I think a lot of fighters should adopt something like that, but I think the UFC really should take some of those WWE principles, the show, making sure they add some flair, having the fighters come out with something that's unique. Do you think that's a better approach than just hoping a fighter can develop into something like an Alex Pereira?
Absolutely, but they won't do it because they're too like they're very like strict. Like even if they could like wear like a uniform or something different when they come into the octagon, that at least would like catch some attention. But they don't do that. They've got the deal with Venom. They got to wear the tracksuits. Everyone looks like a white rapper from the '90s coming into the into the octagon, right? They have to wear the tracksuits. So I mean, yeah, I trust me. I would love to see them. I would like to see them bring back the ramp. Remember when they had back that in the Tito Ortiz days, like just to make it more entertaining. Like other promotions do it. You see like Bellator did that for a while. I went to, before they went under, Bellator had a really good show, their Bellator 300 event. I was at that event in San Diego, and like, it was like, it just felt bigger. Like they had the cool screens and they had the fireworks coming up or the fire coming out of the, when they would come through the entrance. Like that to me is more exciting. I don't know why. I think it's a time thing, or again, I think they do too many events. I think the UFC is just like, this is what we have. We know people are going to watch it. We don't need to add that extra little bit of flair in there. But I agree. Like, I think that there would be more interest if they took time to, build up more superstars. Now, I've had this idea, and I want to pitch this on the show, and it kind of ties into what you're talking about here. Here's my solution into how the UFC can build more superstars. So instead of doing an event every week, you do maybe like a fight night card, not at the Apex, because I think they go there too much. Fans are sick of it. You do maybe like a fight night card, like they're going to London this weekend. That's cool. Fight night card, maybe you could throw an Apex show in there. And then in that off week, you have a reality show that airs on like a Friday or Saturday or something. And it's like Full Swing, where it's like a behind the scenes of like they follow a fighter around. And you could do it for the whole year, right? Like you could do this in advance and you could do it. And like one of the success of Full Swing, and I'm a huge fan of that. I don't watch a lot of golf, even though I play. I don't watch a ton of it, but I get up to date on what's going on because of that show. I think that would resonate so much more with fans, and people would be more tuned into to root for someone if they could see that other side of them. Because really, if you think about it, outside of the interviews that I do and other people do, you don't get a lot of the personality out there. You certainly don't get it on media day. You get some of it, but a lot of it, they're not in their environment. That's them being in a media day. They're not in their element. So I would like to see them, put some money into like a behind the scenes, like they do Embedded, but it's such like, I don't even watch Embedded that much because it's just like, it happens on fight week. And it's like, you got like, when are they dropping it? Like it's, it's like 5-10 minutes, like give me a good 30-minute, like documentary style episode once a month where they follow a fighter, and then there's more interest built into that. I think that would be better. And then you do the pay-per-view. I just think if they cut back the roster a bit, made more quality instead of quantity, I think fans would be more into it. That's my pitch. And it ties into your superstar thing, because I think you could build more people that way, the same way that golf has built certain names because of Full Swing.
Yeah, you know what? You had a good point. I think you made a good point. The only thing I would disagree on is the Embedded, because I do think Embedded is the only time fans get to see the pullback. And it kind of relates to your point where you're saying have, a camera crew or pick a fighter, have someone, document their life, because Embedded is the first time you actually get a pullback to see behind the curtains on what the fighters are doing. And I think that's part of the reason why so many people are complaining about the Apex, is because, and this actually leads to my next question, so let's get into it. Ariel Helwani and Renato Moicano has opened up talking about this because, Roman Dolce and Marvin Vettori, who just fought, if people didn't watch it, they complained about the quality. It seems soul-sucking. It seems boring. It seems like there's no energy or thought put into the production value. And I've kind of noticed that when I watch the Apex shows, there's no flair. During the week, when the card is coming up on Saturday, there's nothing really during the week until like Wednesday, Thursday, when you get the individualized interviews. But even then, by the point, is it quick enough to get enough interest for these cards? So you mentioned, and you've talked about this on your live streams a lot, about the UFC doing too many pay-per-views and too many events. What do you think is the end game? Because for me, I understand from that standpoint, there are a lot of cards that I see. I'm like, I'm not getting up. I'm not staying up until 1-2 o'clock in the morning to watch, this card. But there's also the side to a lot of people say, well, hey, it gets a lot of fighters, opportunity to fight in front of an audience. It gives those names that nobody thinks about, or those fighters who don't have the chance to fight on pay-per-view yet, an opportunity to get their name out there, put on a star performance. What do you think is the end goal to this? Because I find it hard at this point with ESPN and UFC. I just don't see them telling them to take back the quality or tape it down a little bit. I can even see them asking for more content. So what do you think is the medium? Do you think we will get to a point maybe when UFC switches over from maybe ESPN and maybe go to Netflix, that maybe we might see that quality and quantity kind of drop down just a little bit?
No. Unfortunately, I don't. I wish that was the case, but I think the UFC just looks at it as people are going to watch fights every week. I think if they had it their way, they would do multiple events a week, and they know that people would watch. I mean, we certainly have that during Contender Series season, right? You have the Tuesday nights, and thankfully that's only 4 fights. Imagine if that was 12 fights, that would be even worse. Like, people wouldn't watch all that, right? It would be too much. So I think that I think that they look at it as people are going to pay for it. The only way that things will change is if people don't buy tickets, if people aren't buying the pay-per-views. Like, I had we had this talk on my chat today where they're like, the pay-per-view model clearly doesn't work. Well, it does work because people are still buying them. Otherwise, they wouldn't do the pay-per-views. Like, at the end of the day, the UFC is a business, and they're about making the most money possible. So whatever they see is fit for the bottom line, they will do it. ESPN looks at the UFC as it's content for us that can fill up the hours. Like, I don't watch, and I've said this publicly, like, I don't watch every fight night card live. I don't have time. Like, I will PVR it, and I will watch it at my own convenience. There's no way I'm spending 8 hours every Saturday watching like an entire card front to back. I'll catch the highlights, I'll catch some things, but there's just too much going on that I don't want to miss out on. And I commend the people who do it every week, but I miss the days when like I would rearrange my whole schedule to watch every fight. But now even some of the fights, they're not even UFC caliber. They had a girl fight on the prelims last week that I think she won on Contender Series. She only had like 4 or 5 fights. It was the first fight of the night. And all of her opponents didn't have a single winning record before she got in the UFC other than the Contender Series fight. Yeah. That to me is like a prime example of where the quality is significantly dropped of what it means to be a UFC fighter now. A lot of it's they just and then how many times have we seen where a fighter falls out and they bring in a newcomer on short notice and they're clearly not ready, but it's like they have to fill up the slot. So I think the UFC has treated this as almost like a sausage factory where it's like, hey, we got to get the sausage out no matter what. Like, it's we got to put a card together no matter what. Like, if they were like, even take last week's main event as an example, they could have put Dolidze and Marvin Vettori on the last pay-per-view and that pay-per-view would have been stronger, right? Like, they could do things like that if they want, but they don't, because they know that people are still going to buy it and people are still going to watch the Apex card. So it's ultimately a people problem more than it's a UFC problem, unfortunately.
Yeah, no, you're right. And one of the things I gotta say, I know UFC catch a lot of flack, but I do think it is up to the fighters, right? Because I've had this thought, when I first started, learning, watching, and training MMA. I always thought, hey, I could go over to UFC, not because I'm gonna be some Jon Jones world beater, but because I know with my training and my personality, I would be able to transcend on what a lot of fighters doing. And I think part of the reason there is a problem is that a lot of fighters, and I think we're starting to see Joaquin Buckley, Renato Moicano, and the fighting nerds, they're learning to understand the business side of things. Yes, you can be an amazing fighter, but if you go out there, you don't give great interviews, if you don't make people want to come pay and see you, they're not going to come. So I do think, and maybe you disagree with this, but I do think it really is on the onus of the fighters, because the UFC can't push you if you're not giving them anything to push. So for me, I look at it as, there's a lot of fighters on the roster who are amazing. They always give highlight reel knockouts, but when it comes to interviews, it just puts you to sleep. What do you say to that?
Well, I think it is on the onus of the fighter to create a brand and create interest in themselves, and that does come down to them, and that also comes back to the fighter pay thing, where it's like, like, I do agree that fighters should be paid more. I think that I think compared to other sports, it's not on par. I mean, the superstars make great money, but the ones that are getting in the UFC don't. It's not. I mean, there's plenty of fighters who work second jobs just to sort of feed that. But then there's also that other side of it. It's like, do you want to see someone fight? Because this is where the UFC is different than, say, like the NFL or something, right? Like, if you're not entertaining, it doesn't, especially with team sports, it doesn't really matter, but it's all on you if you're entertaining or not. So there is that entertainment side to it. There's a reason that Colby Covington gets a title shot over Bilal Muhammad. The UFC felt that Colby would be better for business fighting Leon Edwards at that time than Bilal Muhammad. So that's where, like, tactics. Look at Michael Chandler. Like, there's a lot of people who hate Michael Chandler, but there's at least interest in it. The worst thing that can happen to someone when it comes to entertainment is to not care, and to not care means you're not watching the fight. So if you're hated, it's better to be hated than ignored, is the way I look at it. So even someone like Michael Chandler, who's very polarizing, at least people are still watching him fight and not turning the TV off when he competes.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that is part of all of this boils down to this next question I want to ask you, because I feel over the last 2-3 years, The UFC is not sports anymore. It's entertainment. And people might say, why you even say that? Well, when you look at some of the bigger names that they push, we're talking about fighters that they want as champions. Sugar Sean O'Malley, Alex Pereira. And there's a couple other names you could throw in there. Ilia Topuria. One of the most common things about them is that they stand and trade. And in the words of Derek Lewis, they swing and bang. And we're seeing, besides Islam Makhachev, there's not a lot of wrestlers getting that push and that recognition that these fighters aren't getting, because they're not going out there and giving these highlight reel performance finishes. So I want to ask you, do you think the UFC is more leaning into entertainment than they are into sports? Because when you've talked about this, and I've seen the interviews with Curtis Blades, Corey Sandhagen, it's like these are guys that deserve to be fighting for the title. Magomed Ankalaev is a recent example. They had to fight 10, 15 times to even sniff a championship fight when they deserved to, get the opportunity like 8 fights ago. But the problem is, like you said, you have Colby Covington. You have some of these other people who are very outspoken. Chael Sonnen said it's best. I've got more championship title fights off of my mouth than me fighting in the ring. So what do you think about that? Do you think that the UFC is leaning more into the entertainment than the sport aspect of things now?
100%. And they did back when Chael was fighting too. I mean, he's a great example of this. He loses a title fight and then he gets another one at light heavyweight against Jon Jones. This goes back a long ways, and I understand part of it. I really do. I'm more of a purist. I'm the guy that's like, hey, I want to see the best fight the best. I don't want to see, for example, I do not want to see Sean O'Malley and Merab have a rematch. I think that's completely pointless. Sean lost decisively, in my opinion. I don't think that that's a rematch that needs to happen. If there is a rematch that needs to happen, it's Petr Yan and Merab. That fight happened much further back. I think that would be a more competitive fight. I want to see competitive, good fights, but the UFC is very high on O'Malley. I'm assuming they think, and they haven't booked it officially, but I know that's the way they're leaning, is they're going to do that rematch. There's a chance that O'Malley could catch Merab. Maybe that happens. I think that's what the UFC is banking on. If it doesn't happen, then we'll see. But I also don't even know if that's good for business, because what does Sean O'Malley do if he loses 2 in a row now? Where does he go? Does he go to 45? How would he do up there? I don't know. There's a lot of questions. So I think that, and again, the reason I say I kind of understand it is because, obviously if you, I remember the heavyweight division when, we're going way back when, Tim Sylvia was champion at heavyweight. It was not a good time. Fans were bored of the fights. They weren't enjoying it. They were sometimes even booing at some of the performances. You don't want that, right? You don't want fans actually turning away from the product. But I think, I would rather them lean a little bit more into merit instead of entertainment, but I also understand they have a business to run. So that's my very politically Canadian answer on that.
That's beautifully said. I think, I look at it this, being an actor, right? I'm in the entertainment industry. And one thing I've learned is you have to stand apart from everybody else. And I feel bad because I know there's some fighters like Curtis and Corey Sandhagen, Magomed, and some of these other fighters who don't want to go out there and trash talk and be a Colby Covington, put on a persona, and just get opportunities. But you have to move with the times we're in, and it's clear the UFC values people who have marketability. So sometimes you don't have to trash talk, but come up with Alex Pereira, come up with a catchphrase, come out with a signature move. Conor McGregor, even at his height. Yeah, he was a trash talker. He was good at it, but he had the strut. Everybody saw that. And so I think that's why, for me, I think it's up to the fighters, because I don't care how good of you are. We've seen it with Bilal. You can go on a 15-fight win streak, be undefeated. Unless you are Khamzat Chimaev, where you bring something to the table that they can market, it's going to be hard to put you over someone like Alex Pereira, who people criticize for, only having 2-3 fights before he got the title shot, right? And so actually, this leads me to a very big question. And I got to call out Justin Gaethje, right? Because Justin Gaethje is your favorite fighter. And I love Justin Gaethje. And this is fun. I'm actually calling him out. But I think Justin Gaethje ruined the UFC. And when I say that, I mean, this dude is allergic to a boring fight. I don't know what it is. There's something fascinating about Justin. I can't put my finger on it. Even in his days in World Series of Fighting, this dude cannot put on a boring fight. And I think people like Justin Gaethje, Dustin Poirier, and the list goes on. They have changed the game to the point where unless you're out there putting on entertaining fights, a lot of fighters, not a lot of fighters, a lot of fans or the UFC look at you differently. And we see this all the time. Oh, he's a crotch sniffer. Oh, he's afraid to stand up. He's a loser. He's fraud checked. Do you think Justin Gaethje has ruined not only the bonuses, because every time he fights, he takes the bonuses, but on a serious note, do you think fighters who have made a career on being highlight real fighters have kind of ruined the sport in a way, in a fun way, but in a bad way? Because now, like I said, when it comes to a wrestler, when they come and they could be good, Bo Nickel, they could be an amazing wrestler, but unless they get that knockout, people don't really like them.
I think if there wasn't a Justin Gaethje, there'd be another guy doing it instead. Like, there's going to be fighters that are a little bit more reckless, a little bit more entertaining. I think fans just want entertainment. Now, one thing we haven't talked about that I think really ties into a lot of this, a lot of the things you were just quoting there, fraud check and all that, that's newer fans. I think the fan bases have gotten way worse since the pandemic. Yeah. You've got a lot of, I'm really convinced there's a lot of fans that don't even watch fights. I think what they do is they pick their favorite fighters, they watch highlights, and then if someone wins, they're the greatest ever and they're a future champion or whatever. And if they lose, they're fraud checked. They should be going to PFL. They should be going to one championship. Like, they just don't watch fights. And I think that it's really frustrating for a lot of us who have watched the sport, know the dedication that these fighters put in. You're going to have fighters who have off nights. You're going to have fighters that maybe exceed expectations. I think it's become way too like black and white in terms of like how people look at fights. Like you even look at like a couple weeks ago with the Pereira and Ankalaev fight. Like, I thought the fight was fine. Was it the most entertaining fight ever? No, but people saying it's boring. I mean, I don't know how you can say that when the majority of the fight was standing. It was striking, right? Like, Ankalaev did clinch him up against the cage, but that was for very small parts of the fight. Would it have been great to see a finish or more striking? Absolutely. But to say it's a boring fight, like, sorry, there's way more boring fights that I could point to than that one. And I think that's just two high level guys. I think a lot of times when you get two guys that are so high level, they're not going to be the most exciting thing because they're trying to win. If you win, you're, again, you get you get the win bonus, you get, all these things that come with it. If you lose, then it's what we just described. You're fraud checked. You're terrible. Like, this is what I mean. And that's, I think it's not the Gaethjes that are ruining it. I think what's ruining it are the fans that have these unrealistic expectations when it comes to fights. Like, the thing that it blows my mind is that a fighter can have one bad performance and everyone's so quick to write them off. I remember this happened to Dan Hooker a couple of years ago. Dan Hooker goes down to featherweight, fights Arnold Allen, gets knocked out. Dan Hooker's done. He's off to Bellator. He's terrible. And then what happens? He goes up to lightweight. He wins a couple big fights. And now it's like, oh yeah, Dan should be fighting for the title soon. Like, that's how like quick people are to turn on the fighters. And I think that's really a bad way of watching the sport, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's horrible. I see some of the takes, and I see it on your content. I see it on Twitter, especially, well, X, formerly Twitter. I see it all the time, and I always get into arguments. And people know I'm biased. I love Jon Jones, but one of the biggest criticism I always see people saying is, "Oh, well, he fought bloated middleweights," or Cyril Gane was never that good just because he lost to Francis Ngannou. And I always tell people, y'all have revisionist history. Like, I remember when Sergey Pavlovich was the guy. Everybody thought he was going to knock out Jon Jones. He lost to Tom Aspinall. Then they said, oh, Curtis Blades is going to be the guy to stop Jon Jones. His wrestling is amazing. Tom Aspinall beats Curtis Blades. Curtis Blades was never that good. He's fraud checked. He's irrelevant. And now we're seeing it with Islam Makhachev. They're saying, oh, he's ducking Ilia Topuria. He don't want to be fraud checked. It's, for me, I think it's not so much the newer fans. I think it's the fans that gamble, because oftentimes I've seen it's the fans that put their rent money on. They're mad that when they lose that money, then now that fighter is against them. And it's just, for me, it's just become so annoying, because at the end of the day, these fighters don't owe you nothing. And if you want to gamble, I don't gamble. I watch all the fights. I know every fighter for the most part. I don't gamble because at the end of the day, they don't owe me anything. And I think gambling has ruined the UFC. Mostly, it didn't ruin the UFC, but it has ruined the fan base, because now people can enjoy a fight without them saying, "Oh, well, I lost money, so no, this fight card is boring." And I think
or this fight's a robbery. Like that's like, I heard that with the Pereira fight. Like, Pereira got robbed. It's like, no, it was a close fight. Like, it was Ankalaev won. Like, I don't think there was any question about that, but. You're exactly right. Like, and I'll say this: you can bet on fights, and you cannot be a jerk about it. Like, I bet on fights for years. I don't bet a lot. I bet a little bit because you get some insight covering the sport. But like, I just think you don't. If you're first, thing after watching a fight card is to go message the fighter that you bet on, then you're an asshole. There's no other way to put it. Like, there's no possible way to defend that. Like, if that's your first thing that you think is a good thing to do, then you're not right in the head. I don't agree with that type of stuff at all. Apologies for swearing on here. I try, gotta keep the persona of a nice Canadian on here, but it's just like it's just frustrating because, like, imagine having your worst day at work, then imagine a bunch of people seeing it and emailing you and harassing you and telling you how bad your day at work was. That's what it's like being a fighter when you lose. Yeah. It's not fun. I can't imagine some of the stuff that some of these guys get.
Yeah, especially with Jamal Hill. Like, I see the way how people treat this man on social media, and it's just like, and then they get mad when he defends himself. And I'm just like, look, at the end of the day, if y'all seen him in person, y'all would not talk like this. Honestly, I think the biggest solution would be if people use their real names. You don't have to put your full name and stuff, but if people use their real names and stuff, I think it would cool down. But like you said it plenty of times on your live stream, people hide behind these names. Nobody knows who they are, and they can tweet, say whatever they want, put out fake fight news, and there's no repercussions because at the end of the day, nobody know who Islam Habib 2.8 is. Yeah,
exactly.
And, it's annoying. But anyway, let's have some fun, because, I know you're a busy man, so I want to keep you too long, but I want to have a little fun. So I've been doing a segment on this podcast the last few episodes where, I put you on the hot seat, James. And this is purely for fun. This is not to,
of course,
clip
Don't
this
worry,
and make
good.
So dream matchups. Everybody in the UFC, everybody who watch MMA have dream matchups. I know I do. I know you do. So I want to have a little fun. So I got a couple different matchups that I've seen on Reddit. I've seen mentioned on your live stream or just in general. And I want to get your thoughts on it. You ready?
Yeah, let's do it.
Jon Jones, and this is a big one. Jon Jones versus Cain Velasquez.
Cain Velasquez.
Ooh, really? Okay.
I'm not sold at Jon in heavyweight yet. I'm not. Like, again, we have such a small sample size. We have the Gon fight, which Gon, got taken down, submitted. It was quick. And you really can't take anything away from the Stipe fight. I mean, that was a shell of Stipe that we saw fight Jon Jones. I don't think that's... that's why I want to see the Aspinall fight. I think the Aspinall fight will really tell us how good Jon is at heavyweight. I'm not there yet. Jon is the GOAT as far as light heavyweight. I will give him all the flowers there. I think heavyweight, there's some question marks there, personally.
Yeah, real quick, just to touch on that before I get back to that. And, I've mentioned on your live stream last week, for me, I don't think Jon is chasing to be the greatest heavyweight of all time. I think what he's doing, he's at the point in his career where he can call shots, right? And you got to look at the legacy aspect. I know, trust me, I was interviewed by TNT Sports at the Jon Jones and Stipe Miocic fight in Madison Square Garden. And I said the same thing. Said Jon Jones is fighting people he knows. When you look at his legacy, nobody's going to think of 40-year-old Stipe 5 years from now. They're going to see Stipe. He's chasing name value. He's chasing people that if he beats them, it means much more than just a paycheck. And so I get why people want him to fight Aspinall. I'm not against the idea of him fighting Aspinall. I just, for him at his point in his career, pushing 38, it's like, okay, if I go out there and I beat him, what will people say? Because I already see fraud check coming. If Jon Jones lose, I can already see fraud check coming. So it's an interesting time. But let's get back into this. All right.
Yeah,
so
sure. Yeah.
Daniel Cormier versus Francis Ngannou.
I think Cormier would win that. I think the wrestling would be the difference. A little bit more well-rounded. Now, Cormier would be undersized. Obviously, Ngannou's a lot bigger than him. I probably would go Cormier just because he's that good of a wrestler.
Yeah, I agree with that one. All right, so some of these names are going to come up quite a few times because of
whatever you
their
need.
dominance.
Yeah.
Stipe Miocic versus Cain Velasquez.
I think Cain's better. Yeah, I think Cain would win that. Yeah.
Now this one I threw in as a secondary. Stipe Miocic versus Fedor Emelianenko.
It's tough. I might go Fedor there.
Interesting.
He was really good back in Pride. Like, he was undersized, but he was quick. He could knock you out. And this is not like, I was a big Stipe fan during his run. I think he did incredible. I just think that, like, if we're talking guys in their prime, like Fedor in his prime, I don't think anyone was going to be him on the planet. Like, he was the big fish that the UFC never got. That if people talk about what ifs, Fedor in his prime in the UFC has definitely got to be near the top of the list. I do wonder how he would have done.
That would have been interesting. That's fun. So let me give you a couple more before we wrap up out of here.
Yeah, of course.
All right. George St. Pierre, your fellow Canadian, George St. Pierre versus Kamaru Usman.
George St. Pierre.
Okay, I have Kamaru, not because George isn't bad. Is bad. I just think that the stand up is the key, because I think Kamaru could defend some of the takedowns, but this is all dream matchup.
Yeah,
so
no,
let's keep this
for sure. Yeah. There's no wrong answers here, man. This is fun.
Yeah, 2 knockout artists: Derek Lewis and Mark Hunt.
Both hit really hard. I probably. It's a really tough one, actually. Probably go Mark Hunt.
Mark Hunt.
Yeah.
Alexander Gustafsson versus Yuri Prohaska.
I might go Gustafsson on that one because he's tough to finish. Like, although saying that Rumble knocked him out, right? But Rumble's got a bit more power than Yuri. Maybe I go Yuri on that one, actually. Yeah, I'll change that pick. I'm going to go Yuri, yeah.
All right, just a couple more. All right.
Yeah, whatever you need, yeah.
Fedor versus Daniel Cormier.
Daniel Cormier.
Yoel Romero versus Hamzat Chimaev.
I still feel this way. Chimaev's got to finish it early. Because, 5 rounds, I think Romero probably takes it, but I'll go Chimaev. All
right. Michael Venom Page, MVP versus Anderson Silva. Now, I got to ask you this, because people always talk about Daniel Cormier versus Brock Lesnar. That one, I always thought Daniel Cormier wins. But the final one, Jon Jones versus Brock Lesnar.
Brock's so big, though. Like, I've seen both of them in person. Like, he is way bigger than he's probably the biggest fighter to ever fight in the UFC. Like, in terms of like size and strength, like he looks like a superhero character. Like, he's really big. I think I'd have to go Jones just because of the skill set, but Brock would certainly be interesting for that fight for sure. Like, this is something I think we still don't know. Can Jones take a punch at heavyweight? I don't know. Like, we haven't seen it. Like, again, Gon didn't even get to throw anything because he got it taken to the ground. Like, can he handle? That's why I think I'll tell you right now, I think Aspinall beats Jon Jones, because I think Aspinall can knock him out. And I think Jones has not been able, I've yet to see him take a punch at heavyweight. And and I think that's a big factor. Fight starts standing. He gets one shot in there. Who knows?
Oh, so. I'll keep this short. I know you got to go.
Yeah, no problem.
I gotta say, I know people would like to say, Stipe is old and washed up, but Stipe did catch Jon Jones a few times in that fight, and but
he doesn't have the power he used to. That's the problem.
That's true. That's fair.
That's again, if this was the Stipe that fought Jon Jones, like they were trying to do, I think back in like 2014 or whenever it was like ages ago when Stipe was in his prime. That fight's a lot more even, and if he beats Stipe, then he gets all the flowers from me, 100%. But right now, you're getting. I mean, this would be like fighting, like this would be like Dricus du Plessis fighting like Dan Henderson, right? You know what I mean? Like way past his prime. Like you're fighting a fighter that's a shell of themselves. They're not they're not the version you're supposed to like that was in their prime. So it's tough for me to kind of gauge how good they are. That's all.
Yeah, that's a fair point. I think what the intrigue for me is. I know
as a quick example, just sorry to interrupt you here. I think Curtis Blades would beat Stipe. I think Sergey Pavlovich could beat Stipe. Like, I really think that the Stipe that we saw, and I love him. He's a great fighter. I just think he's so old and slower, and he's had injuries, and he's had the layoff. Like, you're just not getting anywhere close to the guy that beat Cormier in their fights. Like that Stipe, I think, was sort of the last good Stipe that we saw.
That's a fair point, and I think the Francis fight, the last Francis fight, did play a big part. But for me, Tom and Jon, I do think Jon is going to come up with a different game plan. He's not going to go out there and trade with Tom. He knows Tom is faster than him at this point. I'm intrigued because I often hear people say Tom Aspinall's BJJ and his wrestling is great. I don't know if his is better than Jon Jones, and that's the intriguing part. Because Jon is one of the things people always forget is his fight IQ is up there. He knows. I'm not going to go out there and strike with him. So I wonder how this fight plays out. And if it does, I have a strong feeling it's going to play more in the clinch and on the ground. It'll be interesting who gets the upper hand, but I think it won't be a stand-up fight. It just won't. It's too much rest. But We could keep talking about Jon Jones, Tom Aspinall. That's a big thing. James, thank you for coming on. It's always a pleasure to interview, have you on the podcast. Like I mentioned, you have your YouTube channel, Lynch on Sports, MMA's Pros Picks, your live streams every day, every week. Correct me if I'm wrong, Mondays, Tuesdays, and Thursdays.
You got it,
Tuesdays
man.
and Thursdays. Come on, I'm a follower. I'm a fan.
I know. No, I appreciate it, man, and that's why, like, I was happy to come on here. Like, I love chatting with you. You're knowledgeable. Like, you run a great podcast too. Like, it's awesome. So, yeah, thank you for the support too, because I see you all the time coming in, and even if we disagree on things, you're awesome. Like, you're a good guy to chat with when it comes to MMA. So
I appreciate it. I'm just an actor trying to break into MMA. But anyway, anything you want to plug? Anything before we wrap up and get up out of here?
Yeah, just Lynch on Sports. That's my channel. I just interviewed Corey Sandhagen. I just posted that on my channel the other day, or just actually before we hopped on here. Yeah, Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, you name it, all Lynch on Sports. You can find all my work there. And appreciate you having me on, man. This was a lot of fun.
That's what I'm talking about. That's James Lynch. I'm the most charismatic man. If you got something to say, I'll spin and backfish you. We're out of here. Stay well, stay amazing, and we'll see you in the next episode.